All right, ladies and gentlemen, the American jury and Bulldog Nation, I got Dr. Charles Cowboy Mehlman back again, and the reason why is because there's some things we didn't cover. And just to forewarn you, we're going to keep doing this. The next time we do it, we're going to get some case specifics to get into the details of what Dr. Durrani did and what Cincinnati Children's Hospital allowed him to do. But I've got some topics that we didn't cover last time. And just so Cincinnati Children's Hospital knows, we are going to pound. You are going to be so tired of us. Too bad. All right. Doctor, there is something called the National Practitioner Data Bank. And the National Practitioner Data Bank is supposed to be a repository of complaints against a doctor, strikes against their record, settlements, malpractice filings against a doctor's record. Were you aware that despite being sued 580 times, despite verdicts, despite settlements, despite suspensions, there was nothing ever placed on Dr. Atiq Mohammed Abubakar Durrani's record at the National Practitioner Data Bank?
Absolutely amazing. We talked last time. We mentioned at least in passing, the Healthcare Quality Improvement Act that our country passed in the early 1980s. The National Practitioner Data Bank, to the best of my knowledge, was part of that legislation, and the concept was to make it effectively, impossible for bad practitioners to hide in one part of the country versus the other. Now, that thing is, a good, whatever we're at now, 40, 45 years into its use. Barely half of the hospitals in the country have ever made any type of report, ever, to the National Practitioner Data Bank.
Wow.
And for the case that you cite regarding Dr. Durrani, it is stunning that not only was he never reported to the state medical board, but also not to that bank. And so it comes back to the real function of how the Healthcare Quality Improvement Act has been operationalized, if not weaponized, to use the term, is it became the Corporate Medicine Protection Act, is what it really became. I would submit that it has done very little, and some would say nothing measurable, perhaps, for patient safety.
Don't you crack up at the names? It's like Joe Biden's inflation attack act, or whatever they called it. It caused more inflation.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Now, along those lines, this is another shocker. Westchester UC Health, where Durrani went after Cincinnati Children's Hospital, never contacted Cincinnati Children's Hospital or anybody, Eric Wall, nobody to say, hey, anything we need to know about?
There was at least 2 high-level administrators who in that transition period left Children's Hospital and became similar or higher administrators within the UC Westchester system, and they also did nothing to stop it. So this also becomes painfully analogous to something else we mentioned last time, and that was Dr. Death, the story of the neurosurgeon Christopher Dunch out of Texas / the Baylor Hospital and other hospitals. And it wasn't until near the end of Christopher Dunch's reign of terror, which overstates it not at all, where they actually communicated with one another and shut it down. Now, there is one hospital in the greater Cincinnati area. I think you know this as well as I do. What's the one place that said no?
He applied, and I gave him credit for it. They're an arch enemy of mine, but I gave him credit for it. He applied at St. Elizabeth Medical Center, and he got denied. And the guy that was behind the denial is Dr. Neil Mosier. This is a wild story, whose brother-in-law is a Pakistani doctor who heard about Durrani,
Wow.
gave him the info, and blocked it.
Wow. So credit where credit
Is that wild?
Credit where credit is due. And so that makes the other places look, the words I would use, it makes them look lazy, stupid, bordering, if not criminal, that what they were interested in was the revenue that could be produced by a sociopathic surgeon.
By the way, you hit the nail on the head. You called him a sociopath, and Dr. Eric Wall, a supervisor that you ran bumped heads with about him, admitted that he was a sociopath under oath in his deposition. And he says, you could find a certain number of sociopaths in any group.
Yeah.
All right, I want to give you a name of a doctor and let you run with it. Dr. Aziz Khan.
Aziz Khan. Is how he would say his name.
Is his first name Abubakar too?
No, his first name was Richard.
All right.
And having seen...
Excuse me. He's the chief of surgery at Cincinnati Children's Hospital as Durrani got exposed.
Throughout his entire time, to the best of my recollection, and nobody is more at fault than Richard Aziz Khan for creating and supporting the wildfire that was
the environment,
the entire environment. He was throwing gasoline on the wildfire, as far as I'm concerned, instead of doing anything to try to temporize it. There was and so it is, and I'm familiar, as are you, with sworn testimony of Dr. Aziz Khan that that left there to be no doubt that Durrani was the #1 moneymaker in the entire Department of Surgery. That's how focused they were on the revenue.
And Dr. Aziz Khan leaves Cincinnati Children's Hospital, goes out to Omaha Children's Hospital in Nebraska, and lo and behold, gets in trouble by defending a doctor who kills somebody on the OR table like something wild.
Yeah.
The surgeons and the OR staff walk out. They go on strike, and it leads to Aziz Khan finally getting stopped, fired, and retiring to Florida.
Yeah, he left Children's with what most people would describe as a golden parachute, and maybe he had the same thing out of Omaha. But the same corporate medicine attitude gone wild is what Aziz Khan thought he was going to take from Cincinnati and take it to the new Children's Hospital. He got an even more prominent job. I think he was a president of the hospital.
Yes,
he was CEO.
Yeah,
CEO.
That's what it was.
But at our place, I started in Children's in 1995, and there was a transition away from just normal surgeons who had privileges to a completely hospital-based, captured medical and surgical staff. Aziz Khan oversaw that through a time period where people said it was regulated growth is one thing. A name for unregulated growth, some people might say is cancerous growth, but there was a period of unregulated growth where there was too many people hired. There was surgeons sitting around, general surgeons in particular, sitting around reading the newspaper instead of operating because there wasn't enough work for everybody to do. But the point was, it was all about getting people that were now under your thumb. Okay? And so as he left, he did everything to try to institute that at the new Children's Hospital. But they had a very different level of solidarity. Cincinnati focused on getting compliant people and controllable surgeons, if there is such a thing. And that's why when they ran up against me, who was not going to have my voice squelched out or repressed, that's why they had to figure out their own way, including firing me eventually. But I love that story that you brought up in Omaha, because that group, they saw Aziz Khan do the wrong thing to people who spoke up in that setting, and they responded with solidarity. That story got attention across the country, and it led to his downfall. He doesn't belong in retirement doing whatever. He belongs in prison.
By the way, speaking of that, one of my pet peeves, and I went on a rant on Facebook Live a couple days ago about it, is I cannot believe the magnitude of the corporate criminal enterprise that's going on, and they never get charged. I mean, the fact that no one at Cincinnati Children's Hospital ever got criminally charged is a stain on Joe Deters' Hamilton County prosecutor time period, and it's a stain on the United States Attorney's Office in Cincinnati at the time this went down. The fact that no one got prosecuted from the Cincinnati Children's Hospital is just outrageous. And you always send me those articles that you got about that. So why don't you tell everyone your thoughts about that lack of criminal prosecution?
Well, one of the concepts that's contained within that is a concept called willful blindness, where they look the other way because they feel that the responsibility is on other people's shoulders, but they passively sit back and count the money as it comes in.
Right.
And so that was the case, to go back to Aziz Khan. That was a time in our hospital where we were literally fighting to get children with injuries into the OR, kids with broken femurs, kids with broken elbows that had indications, that had reasons for urgent surgery. We were fighting. I had partners who were threatened with disciplinary action, okay, because they were fighting basically performing sit-ins, to get people's attention, to get the patient in there. So while we were fighting to get indicated surgery for injured children into an OR, Durrani was doing unindicated surgery in 2 to 3 rooms at a time.
Unprecedented.
Supported by Dr. Aziz Khan and also his other assistants along the way.
Incredible. Something else that Dr. Durrani did at Cincinnati Children's Hospital and every place else that he went is he didn't see that it was important to dictate operative reports.
Yeah.
And as we all know, the reason why an operative report right away is important is because if there's anything that happens to the patient post-op, someone in an ER hospital needs to be able to take a look to see what it was all about. And he wouldn't do this for months, 6 months, sometimes for a year. And their only recourse was a administrative suspension of his privileges at Children's Hospital. And what he would do was he'd ignore that because an exception to that rule was to claim the surgery was an emergency. Yeah. Did that happen?
Oh my goodness, it's too many times to count. And so that was, to call it a slap on the wrist is even a joke. It was a perfunctory compliance with bylaws about when you're supposed to comply with your medical records responsibility. And so it was laughable.
And in fact, the only time they really complained about it was when it was holding up them billing for the surgery.
Yeah, that would get everyone's attention.
Now you have really stayed you've really stayed on this. How much has the growth been? This is a general corporate healthcare question. Mm-hmm. How much has the growth been in the corporate healthcare suite at hospitals? And what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen, the American jury and Bulldog Nation, is the number of executives that get hired at hospitals in administration, creating the administration, where these nonprofit hospitals are forking out $500,000 and $1 million a pop to as many administrators possible while they are cutting nursing benefits.
Yeah, feeding at the corporate trough at the highest levels. So the contrast here, I would summarize this as revenue generating members of the medical center versus the non-revenue generating members of the medical center. A harsh term might be to call them more like parasites versus those who actually deliver
patient care.
Deliver the care. And so the answer is it's bizarre how much it has grown. Many years ago, with a different surgeon in chief, they were talking about the new vice president of such and such that they were hiring. And I asked in an open meeting, I said, is there proof? that like the more administrators that you have, that the better everything gets? You know, what's the correlation?
That's the core question right there. Go ahead.
And of course, there was no such evidence along the way. It was like, yeah, maybe you should just be quiet. And so, no, it is. A couple times when I had more energy, I contrasted us with what we often called our peer group of similarly sized children's hospitals in the country, and we had as many or more high-level administrators than any other children's hospital in America.
That is unbelievable. Now, I want to bring up. We talked about your deposition last time, but we didn't dive into this egregious conflict of interest that David Janitor Brittingham had. And I want to use it because it is so symbolic of what Big Law does, Densmore Shoal does, what they get away with on a daily basis. It is something that, for example, yours truly, who gets suspended in Kentucky for some bogus stuff, and then they don't want to reinstate me. I mean, I never did one dastardly deed even close to this stuff. I mean, never stole, never moral inturpitude, dastardly deed, theft, crime, nothing.
There must have been a speeding ticket.
But and what's wild is what we're about ready to talk about. This is the same guy that hit the contract for 13 years. All right, so David Brittingham is representing Cincinnati Children's Hospital against Dr. Charles Mehlman and his lawyer as he fights back for how he's being treated in 2018. So he hires a lawyer, and Brittingham's representing Cincinnati Children's Hospital to see if they can resolve this dispute. We subpoena him to a deposition. He finally meets, you brought that up, you finally met with Brittingham, Kemp, and Carpenter. So at the deposition, and that what we described before, 40 people sitting around a table, he is sitting there, and he's got his lawyer next to him, and he points at Brittingham and he goes, "What are you doing here?" And Brittingham goes, "Well, I'm here representing you too." And that pissed him off. He was like, "What the hell? What are you?"
Well, small correction.
All right, go ahead.
The key points are
you
on the
correct.
money there.
You tell the story.
And so in the run up to that, I had a different lawyer, a fine employment lawyer at that time, Randy Freaking. And what Brittingham asked was, can we meet? It was a day or two ahead of the real deposition there in June of 2018, June 15th, if I remember correctly. And so we met in Randy's office, and he had certain questions back. He was trying to feel me out. I don't think he really knew what was going to come, but he wanted to feel me out for what was going on. So in front of Randy Freaking, I said, "Well, Mr. Brittingham, why are you?" Well, he said, "Well, Dr. Mehlman, I'm your lawyer. I'm your
Brittingham
lawyer."
said that.
Yeah, I'm your lawyer, and I'm also the hospital's lawyer. And I go, "Okay, thanks so much." And we finished that. And then we moved over to what Bulldog is saying to the day. And now everybody's sworn and the things are being recorded.
This is all captured on video.
And everybody's going around to identify, I'm so-and-so, I'm here to represent.
Excuse me for a minute. Sabrina, you and Jacob need to find, we produced it. It was a collage of all the testimony. We put it out on YouTube of all the main doctors that testified against him, Dr. Tybee, and included Mehlman. Will you find that for me? Go ahead, Doc.
So-and-so says, "I'm here from blah, blah, blah to represent, I don't know, Journey Life or one of those other players along the way.
Yeah.
The UC people, et cetera." Randy Freaking said, "I'm here, I'm representing Dr. Mehlman." And they got to Brittingham, and Brittingham said, "Hi, I'm David Brittingham, I'm representing Children's Hospital." And then they went right to somebody else. And I said, "Excuse me." I go, "Pardon me." I go, "Mr. Brittingham, yesterday you said you were my lawyer. Today, you just said something different." And it's whoa, can we go off the record? Can we go off the record? And I remember Randy Freaking said, "Well, that's the soonest I ever saw a deposition fall apart." And that was a real funny moment.
Well, but see, what's wild about that though is the utter conflict of interest. Brittingham was trying to represent you because you worked there. And he's also representing Children's, conflicted with you. Plus that, guess what? I filed a bar complaint against him for that. Nothing. I recently filed a bar complaint against, bar complaints are supposed to be confidential. but I'm not a lawyer, so I can talk about them. I filed a bar complaint to David Brittingham about his hiding the contract for 13 years. They said, well, we can't talk about that because it involves court stuff. What? What? If I stole $100,000 from a client while a case was going on, I guarantee you the Bar Association wouldn't say, well, we'll just wait till that case is over.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. Now, one final thing that I want to just give them a taste of. This will be the last question for today. What were, just if you could summarize, we're gonna talk about Jade Hamby. We're gonna talk about Jacob Cotter. We're gonna talk about some of these 21 that you've reviewed, and we're gonna get some slides, and we're gonna come back again, folks, and we're gonna dive into the nuts and bolts of these cases. Can you give us an overview, a taste, Doc, of thinking back of what you've reviewed, of some of the things that Dr. Durrani did that was so egregious on these children, like some of the lies, some of the frauds. I mean, he lied about scoliosis measurements, so he would require surgery. He lied about kyphosis. By the way, scoliosis is this way, kyphosis is this way. Spondylolisthesis, which is a slip disc. But just kind of tell everybody some of the things that he did off the top of your head.
He exploited the position of being a surgeon, a pediatric spine surgeon in a position of authority, and exploiting the anxiety that parents had about their children having a degree, having a problem, and with virtually no exceptions, completely ignoring at times very successful non-operative treatments that could work on X, Y, or Z child, and progressing with the pattern. You know it all too well. On the first visit, surgery was recommended, and in some cases booked, okay, with no effort whatsoever for non-operative treatment. And so that is particularly despicable and evil, to take advantage of families, to warn them of horrible consequences. Your child's head could fall off and they could be paralyzed.
He would use those to extreme things.
And
you're going to be in a wheelchair if you don't let me do this.
I would like to I want to fix your child. I tell my residents and any normal members of the public that it's one of the scariest words to hear from any physician or surgeon is the use of an incredibly simple 3-letter word for very complicated processes.
Right. We'll close with this. Along those lines, Sabrina interviewed countless these victims and their parents, and she got post-traumatic stress disorder from it. You just hear these stories over and over again. One of the saddest, I'm not choking, I'm just telling you, but one of the saddest experiences I've had in dealing with Durrani victims and their parents, these children, is the guilt that the parents have that they let Durrani touch their child. And you know why they all did it? They said, it's Cincinnati Children's Hospital. I trusted Cincinnati Children's Hospital.
And that comes back to your corporate responsibility thought from a little while ago. They never warned the public.
Right.
What they did was feed the fire of a sociopathic surgeon for the obvious benefit of collecting the revenue.
And I comforted them by saying to them, don't. You had a right to trust them. And to just show how evil this is, he gets canned in August. We mentioned this in our last interview. He gets canned in August. They don't write a single letter to one of the parents saying, hey, we can, like for example, they fired you without cause. They didn't send one letter to one parent say, hey, we're firing this guy because he's doing unnecessary surgery.
You know what the letters are they sent? They sent letters.
Here's how you contact him.
No, they sent letters of how to stay in touch with him.
Right, how to stay in touch with him.
That's the letter that was sent.
And then they let him do surgeries. In other words, once they decided in August of 2008 he's got to go, because he's doing unnecessary surgeries, they let him operate, not just until the end of the year, through March of the next year doing unnecessary surgeries.
And some of the most egregious, horrible complications occurred in exactly that time frame that you just outlined. It is enough. It's enough to make you cry in your beer.
We want to cover next time. We'll cover Jade Hamby. We'll cover Jacob Cotter. And there was another little girl that he paralyzed. He also paralyzed. This young boy that I went to. He died. Both of the little girl and the little boy both died. And I went to see the little boy and their parents, and it just crushes me. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the American Jury and Bulldog Nation, if you think we're done with this, we're not. Those of you that are watching this can understand why we're going to be relentless and keep coming back for more. Thank you very much, and thanks, Cowboy.
Yes, sir.
The victims of Dr. Durrani will have their day.